have access to a spirit, a strength that enlarges and empowers you. Even better, you don't need to wait for the next big movement. You can heal the world. It's time for governance by grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. Good morning, Gracearchy listeners. It is Monday, the 16th of December, 2024, and I wanted to put that date right into the stream because this is an important moment in the history of our special guest today, who is, by the way, joining us for the second time. We spoke to him last in February of 2023, and this will be a continuation of that story, which I am very, very happy to moderate and introduce to you. It is with great pleasure that I'd like to bring on Jim Babka, our host, and Spike Cohen, our special guest. Spike is the founder and president of You Are the Power, bronze medalist, and possessor of one of the only laser devices that I know of in the world that works very, very well. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Good morning. Hello. Good morning, Spike.
Good to be back. Good morning,
Thanks,
Jim. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I've been looking forward to this, and we're coming into this. Usually I've got notes when I come in. We got a plan. We don't have anything like that here today.
We have nothing planned.
We're jumping without a net.
Nothing's planned.
To have a different kind of conversation, and this is something you and I have been talking about for some time. So I'm going to let you elaborate on it. But when we had you on in February of 2023, we got into what your motivations were. We discussed your spirituality. We discussed your health history and how that impacted you. We discussed how you became a libertarian and how that connected to the way that you were viewing the world. But there's been a transition or a transformation that has happened that you've recently gone through. Tell our audience what that is.
Yeah, so the long story short of it is that on the 20th of November, I believe it was, I after a very long journey, which I'm still on, it didn't end there, but as a culmination of a very long journey, I repented of my sins. I confessed Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and I have since then been on that continued journey of going to church every Sunday, studying the Bible, praying for everything pretty much, and actively seeking out the sin in my life so that I can turn away from it and be as sinless as possible, fully aware of the fact that there is no such thing, but trying at least not to actively sin as much as I can. It's funny because the reason this is actually my first interview about this is that I have been, and this is not characteristic of me. Both of you know this. Everyone watching this probably knows this. I have this very something that I don't usually have, which is I am very, very concerned or worried that I'm going to say something that misrepresents Scripture or Christianity or the religion in general, and so I've kind of avoided doing it because I don't want to say something and someone goes, that's not what the Bible says, and I go, you're probably right. Like, that's how early on I am on this. And so it's why you're the first show that I've been on where I've really actually discussed this. And it's because Jim, you were one of the people that was very instrumental in this journey and continues to be. And B, I realized that this is how it's probably always going to be, that I'm going to be as imperfect a vessel as there's going to be. And that I might become more knowledgeable over time, but there's never going to be a point where I can just saunter in and say a few words, and everyone goes, that's perfectly biblical. Thank you, Spike. So I've decided to kind of lean, as I've been doing from the beginning of this, just sort of leaning into the part that's scary and just lean in faith. And I figured,
okay, so
I already did that big part. This is far less of a scary step.
Let's pick up on that. First, I can attest to the fact that is a sincere thing that I've heard you say several times already, privately. you led this off in a way when you finally did make the announcement that I thought was extremely appropriate, but it also was really consistent with who you are and how this process has gone. It's a nice segue to say, Lord, I believe, help now my unbelief.
Yep. Yep. It's interesting that where that came from. So I have to take a very large step back to explain why that's so important before I get to that part. So, I mean, all the way back. When I was born into no, I know I have to go all the way
Okay.
back. I was born at a very young age. No, when I was born, I was born into a Messianic Jewish household. We actually held Shabbat services. And for those who don't know, Messianic Judaism is we are Jews who believe in Jesus. That's essentially what it is. It is Judaism, it is Christianity. We don't see a differentiation between that when it comes to Messianic Jews. So I've had people say, "So are you a Jew or a Christian?" I go, "Yes." The vast majority of Jews not only don't recognize Christ as Messiah, they don't consider us Jews. That's fine. But the point is, that's what I was raised in, and I believed because I was a child and my parents were telling me that this is what we believed. And I loved and trusted my parents more than anything. And when you're that young, you just sort of believe because you're a kid. And as I got older, and it didn't take long, even before I was a teen, I really just the more I read, the more I thought about it, and the more that I asked questions, I just didn't believe, or I was at least highly skeptical. And going into my teens, I just really didn't believe. I still went through the motions, mostly because I didn't want to disappoint my parents, and also because a lot of people do believe. So it's kind of like you just kind of lean into it. Everyone else is believing, you believe too. But I didn't really actually believe, and I suspect a lot of people that say that they're believers uh, don't actually believe or if they do, I question why they do some of the things they do. But anyway, so I went through that even into my 20s, and I go and when I say I'm going through the motions, I'm going to church. I find a devout Christian woman and I marry her so I can have a Christian wife. Like I'm going, it's not just I'm just saying I believe. I'm trying to live as a Christian. I am regularly praying for just to just believe, but I was praying for the wrong thing, and I'll get to that in a moment. I went to church with my wife. We were married by a pastor. Like I never told her or pretty much anyone else that I didn't believe. And but I just the more I tried to make myself um intellectually believe it, the more I tried to read these stories in the Bible and say, you have to believe this, the less I did. And the more I thought, I don't believe this. I don't think it's real. And I kept going through this, and then, shortly after I was diagnosed with MS, I actually came out to my wife and a couple of other people and said, "You know what? I actually don't believe." And it wasn't because like, "Oh, I got MS, and why would God let me get MS?" That's if there's a God, his concerns are on a universal scale. MS could very well be a part of that. It wasn't that. I was just in a season of going, you know what? I'm not going to pretend things anymore. I'm not going to lie about anything. And if anything, lying about it is also a sin. And so I told Tasha and a couple others. I said, I don't believe. And she said, I'm going to pray for you. And she literally has prayed for me every day since. I believe. I'm sure she's still praying. Um, and um, and so I kind of made some peace during that time of saying, okay, and I think I talked about this on the show last time. I found this sort of common thread between different faiths, that this understanding that life is incredibly rare, as it's like an incredibly rare gift. It's incredibly fleeting. And the most logical way to respond to such a rare and fleeting gift is tremendous gratitude and praise, if you will. And the best way to demonstrate that is through the way we treat ourselves and others. And so that to me, I was like, okay, I'm good with that. And then the weirdest thing happened about the time I was on your show, either just before or just after. I really just started feeling this pull of saying, that's not enough. Like you need to there's more there. You may not fully ever understand it, but you want it. Like this is something we meaning my subconscious in me want. And so I said, Okay." And so I that's when I started talking with you and others. Another person who's been very instrumental in this is Pastor Tub Rorabaugh down in Florida. Talked with him constantly, asking him, just almost annoying him with questions. And but I was still trying to believe it intellectually. I was still trying to look at it, I guess, through gnosis and say, yes, I believe this, almost like trying to do apologetics on myself or something. And it just was not working. And then I, on Twitter of all places, or X, sorry, I posted a response to someone talking about Pascal's wager, and I said, I don't, like, you either believe or you don't believe. The idea that you can go, well, I'm going to say I believe, and then that way I go to heaven, and I got one over on him, and now I don't have to worry about going to hell. And I just thought, that's, you either believe or you don't believe. And it struck me because I'm like, I used to pretend to believe, that's not real. And a few people responded by going, well, no, you can actually say that you can confess belief and pray for help on your unbelief. And they use the Mark 9:24 prayer. And I'm like, what is this? And so I read not just that, but all of Mark 9 and all of a good bit of Mark in general. But getting to Mark 9 and seeing that here was a guy that was literally watching Jesus, had been hearing about it as well, I'm sure, was watching Jesus heal people of their afflictions and their possessions, and said, "If you can do this for my son, please do." He still was, like, he was watching these things happen, and even, Thomas, one of the apostles, he was watching this stuff happen and somehow still had doubts. Jesus's response was saying, "If I can do this, I can do this for whoever believes." And the Father's response was, "Lord, I believe, help me my unbelief." Or there's a few different interpretations of that, but basically, like, I mean, yeah, I believe, but I kind of don't. So if you can help me with that, and he healed his son, he delivered his son of possession. It was just, there were so many powerful things there because it was the father saying, I believe that this can happen and it could be real, but I'm kind of not sure it is. So can you help me with that? And that Jesus, God's response was to deliver, was to give the thing he was asking for. And I'm sure that made him believe fully. And so I asked Pastor Tub, and I asked you as well. I said, is it possible to not fully believe everything, but to say, I'm willing to step out in faith. I'm willing to believe, I fully believe there is a creator. That this is not just an uncaring universe that somehow magically created a bunch of caring things. That's not how things work. There's obviously, we are the fruit of a tree, and that tree also cares, or else we wouldn't care. And so I said, is it possible that I can say, I'm not really sure what I think about what I'm seeing in the Bible, but I'm willing to have faith and just give you that disbelief, give God that disbelief, and let God do what God's going to do with that, and just lean into my faith and into the things that I'm told and I know I'm supposed to do in as part of that faith. And you both pretty much in your own way said that's essentially what we're all doing to various degrees. Like there are few, if any, people who just are like, yes, this Bible thing, that clearly is 100% correct and true. And there's always doubts, there's always lingering disbeliefs and doubts, and you lean into faith. And I said, okay, well, I'm ready to do that. And it was actually Pastor Tubb who said, then it sounds like you're ready to give your life to Jesus. And I said, but I still have all this disbelief. He said, no, you're not listening. The thing you said about the faith thing, that's you're ready to do that. And so that's what I did. It was on a Wednesday. I believe it was November 20th. I marked it down. It was, I believe, November 20th. And ever since then, I've been doing that. I've been, when the doubts and disbeliefs come up, I say, you know what? That's not my problem anymore. This is not something I'm going to try to the incomprehensible is not something I'm going to figure out on my own. I'm going to lean into my faith, and I'm going to, in my prayer and in my actions, say, I am acting in belief and faith. Help me with my disbeliefs and my doubts.
Okay, so there's a number of things to unpack there. I think the first thing that I'm wondering, if I took these sequentially, was, did you kind of con Tasha into marrying you? I mean, there's some degree to which we all do it, right? I mean, we're putting our best foot forward.
we're all
right?
conning our women, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I told my wife she would travel the beaches of the world. Did
I didn't say that. I can say I
no,
didn't say that at least.
okay, but everybody's got something, right? And
Yeah.
and she does travel now, so I am starting to make
That's
up for
true.
it.
I
But
did deliver. Yeah.
uh,
So to answer your question, I was conning myself. I was in a constant state of lying to myself. And it wasn't until we were already a few years into being married that I stopped trying to lie to myself. And I was doing the opposite of what I'm doing now. I was saying, okay, if you tell yourself you believe, yourself, not faith in God, not taking a leap of faith. If you just lie to yourself and tell yourself you believe, it'll eventually take. Now that might work for some people. It doesn't work for me. I'm a libertarian, and we are very big on proofs of things. If we're going to say intellectually that we
yeah,
take something on,
yeah, definitely. Okay, so
so it wasn't. I was lying to myself as much as I would to her to answer that question.
okay, no, that makes complete sense. So faith, what I told you at the time, and I want to share it with everybody here. Faith is relationship. And it is impossible for you to know that your partner is 100% always faithful. There's no, if the standard was constant empirical truth, that was the thing that was happening, that they never spoke ill of you, they never stepped out on you.
Yeah.
If you needed 100% incontrovertible material proof, then you would become a stalker. You would be a very difficult person to be around.
Yes.
I have a relationship in my life where a marriage split over exactly that equation.
Yeah.
If he got in a traffic jam on the way home from work, she thought he stopped off somewhere. There was not really any grounds for believing that, so she was crushed, and the marriage got crushed. It got very, very crazy for both of them.
Yeah.
In a very unpleasant way. And for everybody that was observing it from the outside, there were numerous uncomfortable moments. So um, faith is that your wife, like you have relationship with her, and you have a confidence that's expressed in your day-to-day existence with her that doesn't require you to check up on every detail of her time. In
Right.
fact, she could have gone and gotten on phone, or she could be home late from somewhere, and your mind doesn't automatically leap to that place. You just have confidence and comfort. Actually, there's a security that's attached to that, because what faith is mostly about is relationship. So in our Western culture, we try to attach this to knowledge instead of attaching it to relationship, we attach it to knowledge.
Yeah.
And the people who are professing the faith are as much to blame for this as anybody. Like, the rest of the world not being a part of the faith could be completely excused for thinking, well, that's what it's about, because that's the way it's been presented by far too many believers. But at the end of the day, it really is much more about that confidence. So when someone says, okay, faith is about this knowledge that you have, right? You got to have all this stuff lined up just perfectly. You need to have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. They then make the second step, which is to suggest that, well, everyone, no one of us, not a single one of us can answer all these questions. So where we end up is that we have to make some kind of leap. And then they go, okay, well, you're leaping off into the chasm. In other words, you're doing something unreasonable or anti-reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at least one person showed up in the comments section. When you first posted about this in Twitter, I thought the response that you got was very warm, approving, even from
Overwhelmingly,
people who
yeah.
didn't necessarily agree with you. They
Mhm.
still said they felt good for you. That's great. But not everybody felt that way. And there was somebody, inevitably, this happens in a libertarian circle. And
Right.
everybody's on their own journey. So clearly this person's in a different place. But he brought up the blind leap to you.
Mhm. Yeah, a few did actually. And some were more respectful about it. I actually had people that messaged me who said, "I'm sorry, but I just don't understand. Like, how are you just choosing to ignore your, at least in theory, logic-based disbeliefs?" And I said to all of them, I said, because I want to. Um, I I'm I'm in this season of my life where I want to, and this is something that I want, and it's something that I also have an underlying, it's meta belief that there is a creator, and that this creator actually does care about what's happening. And I think when I was on the show, I used the analogy of, like, inside of our bodies are trillions of living microbiota, and unlike the creator of all things, we don't know the names of each of them or anything like that. But we are aware of them. We heavily influence their lives and whether or not they're alive or not. Sometimes with the smallest of things that we do, and yet those things will never have the perceptual or cognitive capacity to understand or even sense what they're a part of. They're just living their life. And so for us to look up at the sky and say, I'm going to figure this out, we might as well be one of those microbiome looking up at whatever it's looking up at and saying, I'm going to figure this out, or a termite saying, I'm going to figure this out. It doesn't, like, we aren't going to figure it out because we don't have the cognitive or perceptual capacity to understand that. And I also understood that that there's such a gap between us and that creator, that in the same way we can't communicate with our microbiome, it's not exactly going to be easy for that creator of all things, that is aware of every single speck of every single thing in the entire known and unknown universe, not just in this moment, but from the beginning of time to the end of it, is going to be able to dumb down what it has to say so much that we can comprehend it. And it was Pastor Tubb, I believe, who said, what if he did something like come to earth as man and say it as best as it could be explained to us? And it still might not even some of it might still not make sense, and we're still trying to figure it out. But that was the best he could do to dumb it down to our level. I thought, well, that makes more sense than anything I've thought of. And so, based on that amount of this could make sense to me, I'm willing to do faith on the rest and to give that disbelief to God. And I don't pretend that, I guess this is anti apologetics. I'm not going to pretend to say that I have proof of this. And if you read this, then you'll see this lines up with this and that proves this. I don't claim that. I don't even necessarily know those things yet to even try to claim them. I'm still very early on in my learning process. But at least at this point, I'm fully in on faith. I'm fully in on saying, I know there's something out there. I know that it is far more powerful than and far more involved than I can ever comprehend, and I'm willing to believe that its manifestation in trying to be involved in my life and the lives of people on this planet is through the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as described in the Bible, and through his physical manifestation as Jesus. That's the faith that I'm willing to take. And if there are people who go, yeah, but those are, some of these stories have been repurposed from other stories and then put in the Bible. Okay, no, that could very well be true. Maybe some of it's allegorical. I don't know. I leave that to God. I literally leave that part to God. I'm choosing to have faith.
Isn't faith something like being on the spectrum? Like there's
In
a
what
moment
sense?
where you say, I do. And after that moment, then it's not just like magical thinking takes over and all of a sudden you're this woo woo. At that moment, when you say, I do, you then start a different kind of walk where it's filtering and sorting. It's like, oh, that's something I haven't yet learned. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm still walking.
Yep. Yep. It is. And there's two things about this whole journey that prove to me that it's actually three things that prove to me that this is something uniquely different from anything else I've ever done. One is that I feel a total and complete peace about just totally leaping out in faith, and that is so uncharacteristic of me, including with this for quite some time. It literally everything else. I'm not going to say something unless I understand it well enough that I can have at least a 10, 20-minute long conversation. I'm routinely, when I'm, asked to do interviews about stuff, I'm like, yeah, I don't know that well enough to really
Yep.
come on and talk about it intelligently. I think you'd
I've
probably be
heard me do
better.
this same bit 1,000 times. Like there's a
Yeah,
whole bunch of stuff I'm just not going to talk about because I don't feel like I'm qualified.
exactly. And whereas with this, it was like, no, I'm willing to do the faith part first. And then if the gnosis comes over time, fantastic. If it doesn't, fantastic. I'm cool with just doing that. Is not me. And I'm still not that way about literally everything else in my life. Like you said, there are degrees of faith. You have faith in certain things, but there's also a tremendous amount of evidence behind that faith. I have the faith that I have in my wife because she has demonstrated time and again that she's someone I can have that faith in. So it's not a blind faith. This is
Right.
an almost completely blind faith with a very light underpinning of meta understanding that there must be a creator. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I feel wildly out of my depth about this. I feel it's why I haven't really talked about it. I feel unsure when I talk about it. I feel I'm always in a state of going, well, this is my experience. I don't really know how, and that's not me. I am essentially humbling myself in a way that I don't usually do on things. I either talk about something or I don't. And if I'm talking about it and I understand it intelligently enough, I lean into it and I speak from confidence. This is one of those things. I'm literally even now like, I'm going to say something and someone's going to go, yeah, that's not scriptural. And they'll probably be right. That's a uneasiness that I usually, if I feel that uneasiness, I deal with it by just leaning into learning more about it or saying, "Nah, this isn't that big of a deal for me anyway. I'll just leave it to people that know better." I'm instead leaning more into that thing that I never ever do. And the third thing that that strikes me as this proving itself as being something completely different is people I keep having what I'm calling them winks from God. These things that happen where like I will be saying two completely different things to you or to Tub or just about to anyone, and you'll all say the exact same thing. Or I will think of something,
We were
and some of
having
this.
meetings. We were having meetings. I'll just
It's giant conspiracy, man.
Okay,
It's been
well then
going on
that
for
makes okay.
2,400
Then
years.
that actually makes sense. Okay, that
I'm sorry.
I'm like what?
No,
Okay.
I kind of disrupted your point, but I couldn't help
When
myself.
Tasha referred to her wife Susie and then got a little weird and walked away, I should have known that you guys were sharing notes. No, I was it's just there's been a lot of things that are like, wow, is that's not just me, right? Like that's something that's more that, and I don't have that. So like I'm not someone that goes, well, that's an awful coincidence all the time. I really don't. Like I don't see a lot of that in my life, and now I am. And things that didn't that I've been grappling with for so long, and then I'll someone will say like four words, and I'm like, oh wow, that just answers the thing I've been worried about for 20 years. Like it's just all these little like in and of themselves, they'd be like, wow, that's quite a thing, and it's happening constantly. It just feels like so many things are falling into place, and it feels things that aren't even and this is where I know people are going to get mad at me because they're going to go, you're going on lived experience, and that's not what I'm saying. There are things that are happening that are outside of scripture that are telling me I'm on the right path. I know I need to learn, I need to study scripture, I need to, and I am, and I need to understand that in order to be able to truly live as a I understand that. What I'm saying is that I know I'm on the right path even outside of the studying that I'm doing, because all these weird things are happening that I'm like, okay, everything seems to be falling into place. Everything seems to be making sense, including negative things that are in my life. Like everything is making sense. And that's something I can't say that I've ever truly felt, that everything is starting to make sense to me.
Okay.
Which will be true until it doesn't.
And that might be the case.
Right. And that's like those moments are so incredible because you reach one, you go, oh my gosh. And all of a sudden you've got to say I do again. And then everything changes and the cycle starts again, right?
Yep. Yep.
It's marvelous.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a I can only describe it as a journey. It is I am uh and my biggest fear has been, because as you said, it's one of those things where suddenly things don't make sense. You have that crisis of, well, should I be believing this? Did I do the wrong thing? Maybe I shouldn't have announced soon enough. Like I've already had that. I've already had where I'm like, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have announced yet. Maybe I should have waited that I'm really, really, really believing. And every time I lean back on that faith part, and then things feel okay again. One of my biggest fears has been, and I actually have said this in posts, I'm like, please don't, like, I know I talk pretty and I know I can speak with authority on things. Please don't hold me up as a faith leader or as an example of the faith or any of that stuff. I'm still figuring this out. I'm far enough along that I was ready to repent of my sins, accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and do the things that I'm supposed to do to show myself approved and to be and to live in the way that we're asked to be as a Christian. But I'm not um I'm still figuring this out, and I'm still very early on in figuring this out, which is why I keep um like making it clear, like I'm just telling you my thing, and if you're interested in it, fine. If it speaks to you, fine. But like this is not a substitute for for like the things you're supposed. This isn't like, yes, I don't have to go to church today. I heard Spike talk about his faith. That will never be the case.
Okay,
Oh, come on, man! Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, you are not looking to be a religious leader at this point. You're not looking to set up a
just the
cult
opposite.
following.
I want this to be less of me, more of God.
Okay, so how we went down this road in February 23 when you were on the show last time. How does this impact what you do day to day as a professional, outspoken libertarian activist?
That was the thing that I thought was going to be wildly different, and thus far it hasn't. And you and I talked about this
Mhm.
with Susie as well, who I will admit was a little bit more insightful than you were even. And you were pretty darn insightful. So it was not a lack of competition.
Susie's
But
amazing. Susie's
and
amazing.
she'd say like two sentences, and I'm like, well, that nailed what I was asking.
Yeah, like we were saying 2 sentences, right?
No. We were saying paragraphs.
We were
And then
saying,
Susie
"Oh,
would go,
good grief, chapters."
can I just say something?" We're like, "Yeah, sure, I guess so." And so she'd say something and we're like, "Well, we just wasted 25 minutes." But no, so we were talking about, because that was also one of my concerns. I started an organization that is not religious in nature.
Right.
And I don't plan to make it a religious. This is not about I'm going to be doing uh at least part of my service to God and his people through You Are the Power. But that won't be all of it. And I would like You Are the Power to be something that isn't explicitly tied to a faith. My work in it is tied to my Christian faith, to my believing in serving God and serving his people. And there are others who already other team members and volunteers who also are very devout believers who are that is part of their expression. But the organization itself is going to remain, I guess, for lack of a better word, secular. It's not going to be tied to any specific religion. It is what you make it. And so I was talking with you about, well, like, how does that work, and how are we, how am I supposed to navigate this journey with the things that I've already been doing that have not been religious in nature? And one thing you and Susie pointed out is that so much of what I'm doing is part of what led the the part of me that wanted to do those things is the same me that wanted to find what was driving me to do these things and ultimately led me to the cross. And there's something there, like, it's, and maybe I'm not describing this well, but I do feel as though at least the heart behind why I do what I do is the same heart that led me to realizing that I wasn't going to be able to do this on my own, and that something was there was a void in me, and there was something that I couldn't complete myself, and that led me to Jesus. And so I guess how it works, and I mean, obviously I'm referencing God and Jesus now, which is something I didn't do before. And I think I know I have a much deeper appreciation and understanding of how the things that I'm doing, and including the new things that I'm doing, are not just serving, this corporal reality that's happening in front of me, but it's serving a greater thing, including things I don't even fully understand or grasp. Um, but it's weird. I don't Nothing magical happened, or at least I didn't feel anything magical when I was saved. Um, but something you helped point out is I was already, like, trying not to sin. I just didn't call it that. I was already I wasn't doing the studying and church service and all of that, but so much of how I lived my life was I was doing, like, the, I guess, agnostic version of the fruits, like, so this is where I know I'm going to say things that people are going to go, this is wrong. But I'll just go ahead and say it. um
And they will have the opportunity to show some grace. So there, we're settled.
there you
Just go
go.
and do it.
This is your chance. You thought this was about me. It's actually about your
Yes,
ability
yes.
to show
No,
me some
that's
grace while I'm trying to plod my way through this. Thank you. um you are not saved by acts, you are saved through grace. And which is why the show is called Gracearchy. You're saved by grace. The fruits of your salvation, or your demonstration that you are born again, are the things that you are doing, and it shows through that. And it's it's not that you do those things and that's what saves you. It's you're demonstrating your salvation and being saved by the fact that you're doing those things. And a lot of the things that I was doing are some of those things. And it's not that I did those things and that's why I'm saved. It's I already was wanting to do those things. I'm not saying this very well, I don't think.
Well, let me see if I can help out a little bit, because
Okay.
when we had this conversation, I think what I ended up explaining to you is I think you have a shape. Bill has a shape. I have a shape. Everybody has a shape. There's certain things you're created special. You're unique that you bring to the world. And one of the things that you bring are these motivations, these drives to do certain things. We have to, by virtue of where we're at in this universe, solve problems. It's required of us. Some problems are really desirable. We want to solve them. Other problems drive us crazy, and we wish somebody else would take care of them.
Hmm.
And that desire is part of God's will for you. That is who you are. That shape matters. So there's this rather disturbing phrase that's thrown around in some circles called full-time Christian ministry or full-time Christian service. Well, that's all of us. That there isn't like a division between, professional Christians and amateur Christians. It doesn't exist that way. I'm hoping to go pro someday. That and I've met people that literally is like they're thinking like, oh, I'm stuck mowing lawns right now, but I want to be a pastor of a mega church. It's like both of the, that they're looking at the lawn mowing the wrong way, and they're looking at the pastoring the wrong way.
Yeah.
Where you're planted, where you're at, where your motives are. There's this concept to make it put a finer point on it. There's a concept in the New Testament of having something called spiritual gifts, and they're listed out. And a spiritual gift, there's places where you can go where they'll say, oh, take this test, and it's more of a personality test, but it's not really what it's supposed to be. These are given to us by the Spirit. They're kind of a unique thing, and what they are is a burden. I wish the church was more like this, or I wish the gospel was shared more like that. It's the thing that you look at and you say, here's where service really needs to be rendered. And every person that has this gift, one of the dangers that they have is thinking that their gift is better than others, or that everybody should be practicing the exact same gift. But it turns out that a body, which is the analogy that it's applied to, has many different parts. And the parts can't say to the other, my part is more important than yours. Bug off, right? It doesn't work that way. By coming together as a whole, we become this body that is capable of ministering to the entire world. And each of us has a different gifting and even a different audience. So you come at this and you're engaged. And the brilliance statement that my wife made is that you're already serving. Like you're already doing something that could clearly be identified as a ministry in your work with You Are the Power. That does not mean, for everybody listening, that it's going to become a church service. You're still advocating a very basic libertarian philosophy called human respect, which says don't initiate violence, don't steal from people, because every time you do, their happiness, harmony, and prosperity goes down. And the trouble in every one of these settings is that somebody in the bureaucracy, in the state, whether they're at the local, state, or national level, is stomping out some other human being. And you guys have been able to show up at a time of desperation and need and help support them, giving them voice in those situations.
Yep.
And you can see then, if you look at it that way, that that's a ministry, but you can also see that I hope everybody can understand that doesn't mean that Spike's turning this into an evangelical outreach. That's not the point. The point is to help these people. The point is to make sure that they're respected. And then that becomes the part that remains is your motivation is. Like, that's what I think you're starting to express today. Your motivation is, I'm serving the Lord.
And prior to that, my motivation is I'm going to demonstrate to who or whatever gave me this rare and fleeting gift of life. I'm going to demonstrate my immense unpaybackable gratitude for that by the way I treat myself and others, and leaning especially on how I treat others. And in that way, I think in retrospect, I think I may have been planted and God may have been using me even before I was ready to take that leap of faith. I was Balaam's ass. I was I was someone out, God can use anyone. Case in point, he was using me. And or I believe he was using me. So yeah, it's been um a very interesting journey. Another thing that we talked about, and this is another reason why I had and have hesitated to talk much about this, is we talked about the effect of, like, I go and I speak about things and I have people come up to me and they tell me it's the greatest thing they've ever heard and blah, blah, they loved my speech and they want to be a part of it. And, I guess that's my gift, is the ability to not just speak about things, but to rally people around something and kind of lead a cause or a movement towards something.
I would
And my
agree with that.
fear, I think I've demonstrated at least some level of proficiency
Yep.
with that.
Yep.
Um, I my fear is that I guess the shadow of that, or the thing I've always had to battle, is not losing myself to ego in the process. Because when you've got people constantly telling you how great you are, literally thousands of strangers, both in person and online, that you're great, you're great, you're great. And then you see people, that even the people saying, no, you suck, I hate you. You're like, yeah, you're a stranger. I'll never meet you. And yet you have this very strong opinion about me. Like, all of that feeds ego. And so I already was in this kind of constant state of trying to remember, like, you're still the same guy that wasn't, before anyone knew who you were. And you're still, my wife has done a very good job of reminding me that, I'm still that same person. I'm, routinely told that I left the dish in the sink. It bring you right down. But the point is, I was already in that battle of, like, making sure that my ego, don't. I watch people on social media, these like influencers and stuff like that, and they become caricatures of themselves because they start to buy their own press releases and drink their own Kool-Aid. And it's like, I do not want to do that. I want to always, it feels good to hear it. Yes, it definitely boosts your ego, but I want to make sure I'm checking myself. Another fear I've had is, or part of one of the fears I've had, is that if I start doing this, it's going to just take it to a different level. There's now going to be people that are coming up to me and saying, "You brought me to." I've already had people saying, like, "You helped me re-examine my faith, and I owe everything to." And I just keep saying, "Listen, I'm very early on, but I want to make sure I don't get, and this is something that pre-exists this, I don't want to get lost in this. And especially where now I really want this to be less of me and more about God. And if I'm one of the vessels to help, put God's message out there and to serve him and to serve his people, then so be it. And I'm happy to do it. And I love to hear, how it's helping people and all of that. But I really like, I would like to have less of an ego out of all of this. And I worry that it's almost um inevitable that the opposite will happen. And so there are many times, and this is also something uncharacteristic of me, I've avoided, like, talking about things or weighing in on things when it comes to faith, because I can already feel, like, especially after just me kind of casually announcing that I had done this, seeing that response and how it was, like, overwhelmingly positive, and people reaching out to me and asking me, like, like, theological questions and stuff. I'm like, this is exactly what I was worried about. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to become like a aspiring mega pastor or something like that.
In the conversations that we've had, if you'll allow me, the conversation we've had,
Yeah.
that has been a repeated theme of yours about not wanting this. Not really wanting things to change substantially. Like, you are worried about changing your, in your relationship, but you're not like wanting to.
I don't want to lose myself in this when I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to become whatever God wants me to be, and not even have to try to figure it out, for, like, just say, "Here I am, Lord. What is it you want me to do?" I think there's actually a hymn called "Here I Am, Lord." Like, "Here I am, Lord. d- Do with me what you wish to do, and I'm happy to serve you in that way." And if it's doing this, then great. If it's scrubbing toilets, great. If it's some combination of those things or some other thing, that's great. My fear is that it is so easy. And you see this with so many, like, devout, believers, not just of Christianity, but other faith, as they rise in prominence, so too do they become the very thing that they were trying to get away from. They fall back into the world because the world's telling you how much it loves you. and you go right back into the things that you, at least ostensibly, were trying to get away from. And so that's my thing. Like, this is something I talked about with you. Um, one of the things that I've read about, a good way to kind of uh, remove the things from your life that are getting in the between you and God is removing your idols. What are the things that you're truly thinking about, that you're worshiping? Like, what are the things you're thinking about constantly? And I was like, I think about, issues with my health and like worrying about that. And I think about like I think a lot about You Are the Power and how we're helping people and things like that. And I think that's largely a good thing. But like the stuff I'm overly focused on, I'll lean back to me, which means, like probably most people, my idol is me. And so or at least for me, that I think for many people, I don't know how many, but for me, that probably is my idol, is me. And self-concern and self-interest and all of that. And so if I'm trying to get away from that, but in the process, everyone, or more people come to love me even more, then I have this fear that like I end up going the other way. And so I'm in this like constant questioning state of like, should I be talking about this stuff? Should I just I put it out there, now I can go back to doing what I'm doing, and maybe keep a lower profile so that I don't, I don't risk going back to the world. And I know a lot of this is just because I'm early on in this and I'm still figuring it out, but I can't tell you how many times I've talked with you and others about it. It isn't over. I don't want to lose myself in the process. I don't want to lose myself and go right back to what I was trying to get away from.
We would be remiss then, since we brought up what you are doing right now, if we didn't take at least a moment to talk about it.
Sure.
You Are the Power.
Mhm.
What are you doing? What is the core mission right now at You Are the
Yeah.
Power?
So, in one sentence, the core mission of You Are the Power is to spread and act upon the principle of human respect. And the principle of human respect is, as you said, the way we put it is, when we respect ourselves and one another as individual human beings, we are more happy, we are more harmonious, and we are more prosperous. Conversely, when we disrespect ourselves and one another as human beings by using force and by using theft and coercion and violence, then we are, proportionately to whatever level we disrespect one another, we are that much less prosperous and harmonious and happy. And the way that we spread and act upon that, we actually lead with acting upon it. We find examples of disrespect of individual humanity. And that the way we've been doing that is finding people and families who are having their lives upended by corrupt local and state level government officials, who are basically using this authority, this agency that's been deferred to them by everyone in that area, and using it in the way that unfortunately many people use when they have that kind of power, and to harm others for their benefit or out of spite or for whatever reason they do it. And the first thing we do is we find out about that. We organize the public to do something about it. We don't just tell the story and get people mad about it. We find out the individual people that are actually doing it. We talk about it that way. We don't say the government is doing this. We say, Jim and Bill, Mayor Jim and Sheriff Bill are doing this to this person. Here are Jim and Bill's phone numbers and email addresses, and here's a template you can use of wording to say what you think about that. And here's their social medias, and let's let them know what we think about that and get them to back off. And we've had an incredibly powerful success rate in doing that. In doing so, we are not just inviting people to join us as part of this movement where we don't just get mad about things that are happening in our backyards, but we actually do something about it and we win. But we're also in that everything that we talk about is saying this wouldn't be happening if, when Mayor Jim and Sheriff Bill looked at this family, if they saw a family, if they saw individual people in a family, if they didn't see an obstacle to their political hopes and dreams, or a funding opportunity, or whatever they saw that as, whatever abstraction you created in your head to dehumanize them so you can do whatever you want to them, if you had continued to treat them and look at them as individual human beings, you would never do that.
So I want to jump in
And
right there, because for me, the warp and woof of Christian, being a believer, and then of being a libertarian, like, to me, they're fabric. They just go together,
okay.
and they start at that point. That's, at the very beginning of the story. You open the book. We're told right in the first chapter of Genesis that we're made in the image of the Creator, that we're designed to be that way. There's something special about us. This concept's called Imago Dei, image of God.
Yep.
And every person that we meet has that. So there's nothing inconsistent between your libertarianism in this instance and what you're doing, the way you're going out and expressing it, and being a believer. Quite the contrary. They very much go together. They very much blend together. You've helped me see things that I was aware of, but in such vivid tones because they're concrete, real things that are happening right now. Homelessness, where municipalities and counties are not wanting volunteers to solve the problem of homelessness because there's federal or state dollars and they have to demonstrate that they have a problem in their community. So they're willing to use the force of the government to shut down, interfere, even arrest people who are involved in serving the homeless population.
Yep. And that's one of many egregious examples. Another one, which, depending on how you look at it, it's even worse. I think they're all different levels of egregious, but most recently we've stumbled upon the fact that thanks to some really terrible, perverse funding incentives at the federal and state level, where they basically give child protective services, the family courts, everything involved in protecting children in the state, they give them more money per case, but only if they call that case abuse, and they don't actually follow up to make sure it was actually abuse. Like, they don't take the money back if it turns out it wasn't abuse. And that has created this subsidization of a specific outcome where you now have an increasing number of CPS, not just workers, but services, and every part of that, the family court judges, the case workers, sometimes the police officers involved in investigating, the child abuse pediatricians, they are looking at chronically ill children whose injuries, their bruising, their fractures, their swelling, and all of that are completely medically explained by chronic health conditions that they're documented to have, and they call it abuse and steal those children from their parents, and then use the fact that, and then in court, use the fact that there's no real, in a family court, there's not nowhere near the same burden of proof. And in some states, the judge can just arbitrarily decide what they think to be true without any burden of evidence or burden of proof. They're trafficking children at a fairly large and growing scale. And it's like the most disgusting thing you can think of, short of killing someone, for some people, they'd rather you kill them than to take their children from them forever.
And you had one family where they even made the parents separate. They took
that's happened a couple times.
Because of one child's injury, they took all children out of the home, and then they forced the parents to be separated. They couldn't live or communicate with one another. They had to do so through third parties.
And they had
the mother couldn't deliver breast milk. Like, they were throwing it away. Like there's a level of inhumanity in the midst of all of this.
Yeah. It's inhumanity. And the inhumanity is that somewhere in their brains, now intellectually, everyone involved still understands these are people. They're not aliens. They're not lizards or whatever. But like, they're clearly looking at them, and a part of their brain is just seeing money. This is money. Because if the kid's chronically ill, then we maximize the money, because after we do successfully traffic them to an adoptive family, then we declare that they also have a health problem, which means we get even more money to deal with the health problem. It's looking at it is a physician, a child abuse pediatrician. It is a physician looking at a chronically ill child, and instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm glad we caught this. Now we can finally do something about this," they look at that child and go, "Cha-ching." They are not looking at an individual human being. Or if they are, they're an absolute sociopath. But most of these people are not absolute sociopaths. They are normal, everyday human beings who have been slowly conditioned and corrupted into looking at these people as something other than people. And there's enough authority behind them, enough Milgram experiment authority behind them to say this is what you should be doing, and enough of a financial incentive for them to go, yeah, this kid, this person, whatever, we're gonna use this, we're gonna take this child and traffic it.
And one more area, it's also happening in the area of asset forfeiture. right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Police stopping people strictly because they want to take their stuff. And it's you say this stuff out loud and people go, you're crazy. That's not happening. But one of the things that I'm seeing with your organization is not only are you saying, yes, this is happening, but here's a picture of a family. We want you to meet them. And here's the details of their story, all the facts, including the messy ones and the exculpatory ones. Like all of it's laid out honestly, and then you can see it. And at the end of the day, you can't help but be outraged. But I think there is this instinct that exists within people to A, disbelieve it, and B, to think that, well, this is an isolated case. And what your organization's been doing is it's been getting into a couple of pockets, as we found, like, for example, the story you just told, there's a real problem in the state of Georgia right now. Now, there may be a lot of other places, but Georgia seems to have a huge problem with this right now. You've been able to deliver multiple families that have this. And the good news is you've been able to help. So tell us about how you've helped.
The first thing that we do to help is to get the government off their backs, get these specific officials, find out who they are, and get them to do the right thing. So one of the families that we did this for was the Hernandez family. Both of their children were taken from them because one of them has probably osteogenesis imperfecta or neonatal rickets. It's too early to tell, but they clearly have something that's causing the fractures that she's having. And so they stole both children from them. And they, as condition of their bail on criminal indictment, which or a criminal arrest, the indictment still hasn't come. The trial still hasn't happened, and there's a reason for that, because if you now involve the criminal courts, they're going to look at there's only evidence that nothing wrong was done. There's only evidence that the only wrongdoing was done by the state. So they hold that over their heads for only one reason, so they can impose terrible bail conditions on them, and they can scare them. They can say, "Hey, give up the kids, and we'll drop the criminal charges, and you're young, you can start a new family." Is basically what they're saying. It's like a way to additionally try to scare them into doing what they want them to do. And so they were not allowed to live together. They weren't allowed to speak to one another, much less be around one another. So they legally estranged them, and then also took away their children, essentially indefinitely. They spent thousands of dollars in court to get their child's medical records. They got the medical records finally, and they went, "Oh, great, we'll take this to court, and the judge will see that this is all a big misunderstanding." The judge refused to listen to their medical experts, came up with excuses not to even accept their testimony, admit their testimony, and instead took the testimony of a child abuse pediatrician who wasn't even there and whose sole evidence was to say, "Yeah, statistically, when you see fractures like that, it's abuse." And when he was asked for the source of those stats, he said, "Oh, you can find that on the internet." The judge took that and said, "Yes, these children need to be placed in foster care, and I'm ordering non-reunification." So we got the public involved.
Wait. It is actually a valid argument for a doctor, and a doctor only, to say, just Google that.
It's not remotely valid, but in many family courts, it's completely arbitrarily up to the judge. There's not even the burden of proof in a civil court case of the preponderance of the evidence. It's literally, what does the judge think? And so if the judge thinks I like getting money when we call it abuse, that's what happens. And so the interesting thing here is we found out about this. We vetted it heavily, as we do with all of our causes. We got it out to the public. We said, here are all the officials involved. Here's their email addresses. Here's their phone numbers. Suddenly, no one wanted to do this anymore. None of the officials involved wanted to fight it anymore. The judge inexplicably did a complete 180 and went from saying, "I'm going to destroy your family. I believe this guy. I'm not even going to have to look it up on Google. You'll never see your kids again.
Well, it's not
you'll never see each other again."
It's not inexplicable. The founding document of WikiLeaks, the manifesto that kicked that off, basically said that when a conspiracy is going on, the way you're shining light inside it, breaking up the connections so that,
of course,
conspirators can't even trust each other. Like this is what you have to do. You have to get inside it, and you have to expose it. And this is a very solid thing. This is accountability. That's all that's being asked for here is accountability. Like
exactly,
most of the people that are coming and supporting You Are the Power at, what's your website? youarethepower.net.
.net. Yep.
Most of the people coming to youarethepower.net, most of the people joining you on social media who are, cyberbullying the government in these cases, are not coming at this from some pure philosophical position. They're not predisposed to even believe that this is systemic, right? They're just simply outraged at what's happening to an individual because their humanity is showing up.
Yeah, they're completely our membership, some of our most active volunteers are not people who would even describe themselves as libertarians. Early on, it was almost entirely libertarians. As we've grown, that's not been the case. But they all are implicitly, and in some cases explicitly, and in their own words, they are adopting and acting upon the principle of human respect. Deep down, they understand this is wrong. We need to fight for individual human beings, and this is what happened. So in the case of the Hernandez family, the judge did a complete 180. Said this is out of my court for now. Once those criminal charges are dropped, I will officially sign off on ending this entirely. I'm ordering for the children to be able to go back home. The bail conditions at the criminal side were changed so that they can live together now. So the family's back together now. We fully anticipate that at some point that's politically expedient. They'll just drop the charges unceremoniously because there's nothing there. But more importantly, the family is back united where they should be, and they're whole as a family again. And we've done this for so many other families. We're doing it for more families, and we're doing it for other things that are other types of things: eminent domain abuse, civil asset forfeiture cases, refusal to release body cam footage after incidents of police brutality and wrongful arrest. The examples you gave with arresting charities for getting in the way of government's grift with NGOs in the area, all of that stuff. And we are not just doing that. And we're not just waking up the public to what's happening there. And in many cases, we're not just also waking up legislators in those states as to what's happening, where they're now taking action to fix these things at a legislative level. But under all of it, we're spreading that underlying message that this stops happening when we consistently demand to be respected as individual human beings. And the beauty of that is it's one thing to spread an idea, and we've talked a lot about this, Jim. It's one thing to get people to adopt an idea. If they fully believe that idea and they do nothing with it, then it's their faith without works being dead, right?
There
Like
you go.
it's their oh my gosh. See, I keep discovering.
See,
but
you brought it full circle. I like how you did that.
They if you believe this thing and you don't do anything about it, then you're the tree that didn't even fall in the tree fell in the woods in your head. Who cares? But if you're acting upon it, even as oh gosh, that's what I'm doing with faith, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
See, this is that thing I was talking about where like I just start like realizing how this all comes together.
And it's actually, oh gosh, I got to think of a better way of saying this, but when you encourage officials to do the right thing,
Yep.
you are helping their unbelief.
Yeah. I just discovered a few things just now. Yeah.
Faith without works is dead. And it's interesting to me that it was originally a marketing thing for you. Like you were giving people the activity to do. You were connecting with them in a concrete way. You were reaching them emotionally. Those are all things that somebody would do strategically that are very smart. And it's working. It's making a change, but it is putting the works in, and it's building the faith right behind it as people do the activity, which is a lot of how a healthy walk with Jesus should work.
It's saying I'm going to do what I know I'm supposed to be doing and that I have a growing faith and belief in, and I'm not going to wait until I reach full perfect singularity understanding of it first, which never happens. And that's what I've been doing with my faith more recently after many years of trying to reach my perfect level of knowledge. And it's also something that libertarian brained people, people that are maybe more on the analytic and cerebral side, often try to do. We're going to figure it out first. We're going to climb to the perfect level of understanding, and then we can start taking action. And that's not how life works because you never fully reach perfect understanding. As you go along, you're in this constant state of learning and relearning and unlearning. And so you never take the action because you're trying to reach the pinnacle you don't reach. And that's what I was doing. And I would mock liberty, not mock, but some mocking. I I would tell libertarians, you're doing the wrong thing. You need to come join me as we're doing the works while we grow in the belief and join and invite others to join us in that belief. But I was literally doing the thing I told them not to do when it came to the most important aspect of my life, which is my walk with God. And I'm now doing the thing I've been telling everyone else to do, and I'm doing it with okay.
The tough part is now you have to stop talking about it.
So
Yeah.
I think there's one other topic, and maybe you could think of something that we should hit before we go. I would tempted to just drop out at this point because I think what we just all witnessed on your face, for those who are watching as opposed to listening, what we all just witnessed happen. We saw epiphanies hit. Like they literally,
a few of them, yeah.
Yeah, they were just dropping in on you, and we all got to see that registered look on your face. For those that were watching. But I don't want to end there. I want to make sure we take care of two other things.
Sure.
One, there has been, unfortunately, those believers, and they do continue to exist. I have some of them in my Facebook circle who are judgmental, who, you believe this or you're going to hell, you're a bad person, whatever. That does happen. And so consequently, it's almost perceived in some ways as a threat when someone stands up and says, "Hey, I now believe too." Oh yeah, he's one of them. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk to people, explain where you're coming from. Are you one of them? Have you moved into a position of like, hey, I figured this out. Everybody ought to be where I'm at right now.
No, literally the opposite. I am at a position where I gave up on trying to figure it out and have said I'm willing to have faith in this, and I'm going to keep an abiding faith in this. I feel, and I'm doing it because I feel a growing comfort in that faith. Like it was a leap of faith that is increasingly a faith that I'm comfortable taking that leap, which drives home that it's the right thing for me to be doing. But the point is, I'm not trying to say I got it all figured out. I have less figured out now than ever before. Even though things are falling into place, what's falling into place is me going, oh, yeah, this is all incomprehensible. And I have been trying to control the reality around me for way too long. And instead of leaping in faith and taking the action that increasingly appears God wants me to do. So I'm saying the opposite of that. I'm also not telling you what to believe. I'm telling you what I believe. And if you ask me questions about it, I'm happy to answer it and to guide you along that path to the extent of telling you what I've done. And if that helps you, then fine. But no, I'm not trying to sell you on anything, at least not now. Maybe if I know more, I'll feel more comfortable doing the evangelism part. And I know that's part of the commission. I'm not ready to do evangelism until I'm a little more comfortable talking about it. And again, maybe I'm doing this the wrong way and I may soon have an epiphany that I shouldn't be doing it that way. But regardless, yeah, I'm not trying to tell you that I've reached a perfect anything. It's just the opposite. I'm more confident in my inability to do this on my own than I've ever been before. And I'm also
wait, because you're already doing it. Like evangelism is something one day your business card changes, right?
Yeah.
What you're already doing is evangelistic.
No, yeah, people are already asking.
You know what I'm saying? And
this is so I'm still sitting here going like, well, I'm not an evangelist yet because I'm not like going and telling people, hey, have you heard about?
But it's
my
you're
Lord
not
and
doing it
Savior
with
Jesus
judgment. I did like how you expressed it because you still spoke of like, okay, if you want to know what my experience is, I'm going to tell you. You're going to have an answer for that.
Yeah.
But that is evangelism.
Yes, but not in a overbearing proselytizing kind of way. Right.
I'm not proselytizing. Yeah. Okay. I guess that's the thing. I am evangelizing. I'm not proselytizing.
Yeah. You don't strike me as a proselyte, whatever you say that. You're not that.
Yeah. Proselytizer.
Yeah.
Proselytist.
Well, so I feel like I do proselytize or evangelize the principle of human respect, and that's something I've been doing. But yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I guess I'm evangelizing. I also, you mentioned judgment. I know we're supposed to judge with righteous judgment. I know that we're supposed to, as we grow in the faith, we are sort of corrective to one another as Christians. We help keep each other in check when one's going out of control and things like that. I am very much in the season of removing all of the various planks in my eye. And I've spent very little time trying to identify anyone else's specks because I'm very much like, yeah, I'm just lousy with planks. It's amazing that I'm even able to see my camera or the screen. And so I'm spending a lot of time with that, and I'm spending a lot of time like deconstructing the things that I never would have thought were sinful, because they're me using me as an idol, and the things that I shouldn't be worrying about as an idol. And so I'm really focused on that. And so, it's probably going to be a while before you see me weighing in a lot on telling someone, you're doing this is sinful, because I'm really spending a lot of time on me right now. And I know long before I can try to, any time that I'm spending trying to unpack what your sin might be, I could find like 50 of my own in that time. And so that's really what I'm doing. So I mean, it's not we judge all the time, right? That's how we live our lives, is through a series of judgments. Um, and we are supposed to have righteous judgment. But I think I will always want to lean on focusing on what I'm doing wrong and what I can do better, and then letting that be an inspiration for others to possibly see a reflection of that and what they may be doing wrong, than for me to go, you know what, I'm pretty good on my sin. I need to start telling you what you're doing wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Jim, are you
Stay
talking
on that
judgment or
side.
legalism here? Because there's like this fine line that has always sort of in play.
No, I actually am talking judgment, because there's also a command to not judge.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Jesus himself says it. Do not, judge not, lest you be judged. Like, there is a form of judgment where we do condemn people who, it's not our business. Like, I tend to think of this, that our number one job is to love people. There's a man that, as I'm sitting here talking to you, is in open heart surgery right now, who says this to me all the time. It's not our job. It's above our pay grade to judge. Our job's to love, and the Holy Spirit can do the convicting and the working. And there's a moment at which people want to come and have a conversation with you. My experience has been that, I've had some of those moments. I've been blessed to have that moment with you, Spike, and I want to make sure before we walk away that we have not failed to cover something that you had hoped. I know that you kept a rather blank slate about this, but is there anything else that
Yeah.
you believe we need to cover before we go?
Yeah, there's one thing. I do want to say before it though, this is a perfect example of me not fully understanding where I should fall on things. So like, I know it's judge not lest ye be judged, but use righteous judgment, which seems contradictory. And I have to learn what exactly that's supposed to mean, because I've I'm in a level of comfort with not knowing what that means yet, because I'm so focused on my own stuff that I'm not even bothering to try to judge anyone else, or use righteous judgment for all my righteous judgment right now is on myself as best as I can. But that's a perfect example of me like not knowing these things yet. So I very much look forward to learning that stuff. So I guess the last thing I can address is, um, I still refer to myself as a Messianic Jew. And so I've had some people, it started jokingly with people going, "Oh, are you going to give up the space laser?" And I'm like, "No, of course not. Because first of all, it's mine. It is a Jewish space laser. It says right here, Jewish space laser. And the arc reactor currently is off for your safety. But yeah. And some people think that's some gimmick gift that you can buy on the internet, but everyone can tell it's real. But anyway, I mean, it even has like, stuff in the circuitry or whatever. Um, but so it started with people going, "Does that mean you're giving up the Jewish space laser, or does that mean I can't call you Bazooka Jew anymore?" And I'm like, "No, I'm still Jewish. I've just taken this step of faith." And so I've had some people go, "Well, you're not a Jew anymore. You're a Christian." And the way I see it is, I'm a and I may change my thought on this, because again, I'm still early on. I see myself now as what I was trying to make myself be basically almost all of my life up until this point, which is a Messianic Jew, a Jew who believes in Jesus. The original, the apostles, and the original, many of the original first century Christians were simply Jews that worshiped Christ the way that Christ worshiped. They didn't stop doing Pesach, they didn't stop doing Hanukkah, they didn't stop doing any of those things. They didn't even celebrate Christmas or Easter or Resurrection Sunday or whatever we call it, because that wasn't a thing that was being celebrated yet. They were basically Jews who believed that Christ had come as Messiah. And so, in my imperfect way of doing so, that's how I see myself. Now, maybe as I go further along this, I may, because I've had people tell me, well, there's no Jew or Gentile in Christ and all of these. So I may further down go, you know what? That's actually true. I can no longer consider myself Jewish, at least from a religious standpoint. Maybe culturally I still am, but like from a religious standpoint, I'm now just a Christian. But as of right now, I'm calling myself a Messianic Jew. Again, a lot of this stuff is TBD. I'm still very early on, but yeah, that's that. I guess that explanation of that is that I was raised that you can be a Jew who believes that Christ was Messiah and worship accordingly, and that's what I do.
So, in saying, as you've said many times, but just now the most recent iteration saying that's to be determined, that's a plea, that's a request for grace.
Yes.
You may not see folks, you may not see things eye to eye with Spike at this moment. Give him grace. You may think he said something wrong here today. Give him grace. You may think I said something wrong. That doesn't seem possible, but go ahead, give me grace anyway.
Yeah.
Let's give everybody more grace. And Spike, I hope this is the beginning of something very special, and that you are the power is taken to a whole new level as you continue to pursue your faith. So thank you very much for the privilege of joining us. I really do
Thank you.
appreciate it.